Today, I'd like to structure this video a little bit differently. The topic is the changes to the hunting horn in the Monster Hunter Rise demo, and the legitimate complaints of players who do not like these changes. However, I want to make clear that I didn't play the hunting horn in World, and I haven't tried it in Rise yet either. I have no Palamute in this fight, so it is not my intention to speak on the specific claims made on either side of the issue. I am not qualified to do so. Furthermore, if the data miners are to be believed, in the full game there will be weapon moves you can swap out to make the hunting horn perform more like its predecessor. This whole debate might be pointless as soon as the game releases, but it is a good opportunity to talk about weapon changes in general. So while this is tangentially about hunting horn, it will be focused more as a response to the common and annoying idea that a weapon being popular or unpopular is a good enough reason to buff, nerf, or otherwise change it in a significant way. Before we talk more about Monster Hunter, we need to talk about why planets form, why the rich get richer, and why cities have so many people. Yes, we need to talk about competition, advantage, success, and the thing that binds them all together, the Matthew effect of accumulated advantage. Put simply, the Matthew effect is a principle that states that those who have an advantage can use that advantage to get more. A large celestial body has the advantage of a lot of gravity. Having more gravity than its neighbors increases the chances that it will pull in meteorites. With each new meteorite consumed, its total mass increases, and with it the strength of its gravitational pull. This allows it to draw in bigger meteorites, and eventually maybe even other planets. The growth of cities and the number of citations academic papers receive works the same way. I quote now from a paper by Mark Newman. Some cities or papers will get new people or citations, but not necessarily all will. And in the simplest case, these are added to objects in proportion to the number that the object already has. Thus, the probability of a city gaining a new member is proportional to the number already there. The probability of a paper getting a new citation is proportional to the number it already has. In many cases, this seems like a natural process. For example, a paper that already has many citations is more likely to be discovered during a literature search, and hence more likely to be cited again. An interesting effect of cumulative advantage is that when graphed, you get a power law distribution, with a tiny minority of objects becoming successful beyond belief. What is true for planets, cities, and papers can be extrapolated and found to be true for almost everything in life. Genghis Khan existed at the same time as at least one of our ancestors, and yet he very likely has more descendants than the ancestors of everyone watching this video combined. Unless, of course, you are a descendant of Genghis Khan, which, surprisingly, is not that unlikely. Almost all competitive fields with differential success will end up with a power law distribution, with a few elements being successful, a few being very successful, and most making do with what's left. The Matthew effect applies to wars, the frequency of use of words in any human language, the frequency of occurrence of personal names in most cultures, the number of papers scientists write, and the number of citations received by papers, the number of hits on web pages, the sales of books, music, recordings, and almost every other branded commodity. And it certainly applies to the popularity of weapon usage in Monster Hunter. This is the dataset for world weapon popularity on PC. There are slight differences depending on when the measurements were taken and what consoles were measuring, but for the most part, no huge changes in popularity ever occurred, and the longsword remained king of weapons at around 20% popularity throughout the entire world lifecycle. Interesting to note is that the top 3 weapons account for 44% of the user base, which is more than the bottom 9 combined. Now, some people will look at this data and come to the conclusion that this is a problem. After all, look at poor hunting horn, sitting at a pathetic 1% popularity. Something must be done to help it, right? Wrong. Through extreme pressure, yes, you can shift these percentages around somewhat, but no matter what you do, there will always be one weapon vastly more popular than the rest. This happens in every video game. You are not going to get the weapons to be anywhere near close to equal in popularity. You can't beat the Matthew effect. You see, in this case, the advantage is something like the number of qualities a weapon has that resonates with players. The longsword gets the largest slice of the pie, because it has the most qualities that resonate with the largest number of people, whatever those qualities happen to be. You could reduce the number of people who main longsword by reducing the effectiveness of those qualities or removing them outright. However, that wouldn't solve your problem, because those hunters would not distribute themselves equally among the other 13 weapons. The Matthew principle would take effect again, and the largest group of those players would settle on the same new weapon, putting you right back where you were. Now, I am not saying that there is never a reason to change how a weapon works. I'm saying that radically changing it to the point it no longer plays like the original weapon, for the purpose of increasing its popularity, is stupid. Because it's not important how many hunters use a certain weapon. What is important is that there is a weapon that suits every player. Let's talk about Howard Moskowitz. Howard is a psychophysicist, a market researcher, and most importantly, the patron saint of this channel. Howard's great contribution to mankind was his discovery that tastes tend to cluster, and that if you find where those clusters are, you can appeal to almost all demographics. Howard got the opportunity to prove this when he was hired by Campbell's Soup Company. You see, Campbell made Prego, and they wanted Howard's help in improving their existing pasta line to better compete with their main rival, Ragu, who dominated the industry in the 70s and 80s. However, Howard knew they were going about this all wrong. There was no perfect pasta sauce, he told them. There are only perfect pasta sauces. With Campbell's help, Howard made 45 different pasta sauces and varied them in every way imaginable. Tartness, sourness, visible solids, garlic content, tomato-ness. With his legion of sauces, he set out to gather data. Howard went to major American cities and gathered people to rate his sauces. He did this over and over in different locations until he was confident he had enough data. When he analyzed that data, Howard came to the conclusion that there are 3 types of people in the world. People who like their sauce plain, people who like their sauce spicy, and people who like their sauce extra chunky. These were the 3 biggest clusters in the spaghetti sauce world. Now, what was remarkable about this discovery was that extra chunky sauce did not exist. The American consumer had no ability to buy it at the supermarket. Imagine for a moment Campbell's excitement when told that 1/3 of Americans wanted something that only they were in a position to provide. Well, they weren't about to let that go to waste, and their efforts bore immediate success. Over the next 10 years, their chunky sauces made over $600 million. Howard built his reputation on this success, and its ramifications extended far beyond Campbell's Soup Company. Because the rest of the industry took notice. It was at this point that you start having variety explode onto the scene. We have Howard to thank for that. Ragu later hired Howard to do the same thing, and today, Ragu has over 30 different kinds of sauces. Now, my point is simple. What is true for spaghetti sauce is true for Monster Hunter. There is no perfect Monster Hunter weapon. There are only perfect Monster Hunter weapons. The point isn't to make all weapons equally popular. It's to make sure the 14 weapons are as appealing to as many clusters as possible. It doesn't matter if a cluster is only 1% of the player base, so long as this cluster offers them something they can't get anywhere else. Trying to raise the popularity of a weapon through drastic change because some group of players think it should be more popular is stupid. There are legitimate reasons to modify a weapon's damage or behavior, but the arbitrary, uninformed opinion of a loud group of players is not one of them. And that's the end of my video. If you are interested in learning more about the Matthew Effect or Howard Moskowitz, I have 2 videos that are unrelated to Monster Hunter, but go into these topics in more detail. As always, if I haven't alienated you yet, I'm sure I'll get to you in a future video. Until then, thank you very much for watching.